All right, so this is my first time using this TSPROF Pioneer, and one thing I really like about it already is that it's set up so that you can bolt it right to the table. And they do send that C-clamp you can see in the background, but I'm set up so that I can bolt it right to the table. So I'm just using some wood screws into my bench to secure that, and I really like how rugged it is. The other thing which they hooked me up with is this angle cube, and I will confess, you can see the instructions out there. It took me a little bit to get to the right settings so that I can determine what the angles are. You'll see I'm now checking the knife, and I'm going to check the guide arm. And all of that really just helped me confirm that there is a printout. There is a angle markings on the post. So I don't really need that angle cube, but it did match up right on with what the post markings were. That knife that was in there is not the one we'll be working on today. I'm going to be working on this one. Pretty sweet little fixed blade carry knife. Before we even get it into the TSPROF, we're going to do a little bit of work to it and just dive right into that. It was kind of a tough grind at the heel of this knife, so I decided that I wanted to put a choil in. So this is the method that I'm currently using to put in a choil. It's a little cutting wheel on a Dremel tool. Makes a real nice little small choil, and in some other videos we could talk about why I like to put in choils on knives like this, but for the sake of this video, this is just one of the preparation steps for sharpening this blade. I got magnifying glasses all over my shop, and here I'm just getting a closer look at that choil. See how I like it, touch it up as needed. As much as I like guided sharpeners, they are slow in that initial phase of cutting bevels or making fixes, chips, broken tips, and all that. So I still am going to do all the prep work on a belt. And then just worth commenting, there's oftentimes some question or discussion around reprofiling a knife and when it needs to be reprofiled. And after running my business for however many years, I just land on the assumption that pretty much all knives need to be reprofiled. So it's very rare that a knife will come in that doesn't need at least a few passes on a belt to get it into a condition where it's suitable and time efficient to put it on a guided system. All right, with that prep work done, I'm ready to get rolling on the TSPROF now. For this first one, I am going to use my Edge Pro stones. If you've been with me for any length of time, you'll know that the majority, actually pretty much all of the guided sharpening system work I've done has been on the Edge Pro Apex. I have sharpened thousands of knives on that system, so I feel pretty proficient in that system. I'm very comfortable with these stones, and as I get to know the TSPROF, I'm going to work with the stones that I have for now, and on a future blade I'll be checking out those diamond stones that came with the system. I have a mix of standard abrasives, whether it's silicon carbide or aluminum oxide stones, and I also have some diamond matrix stones in there. But for any of them, I do like to give them a little chance to soak. So I'm setting up that water bath, let the stones soak while I set up the blade. And just a reminder, like, this is my first time using this system, so bear with me as we get to know it. The first thing here is these clamps. I'm clamping that blade in. I think what I would like to do is that Allen tool was provided with the system. I'm a super fan of the T-handle Allen tools, and even more so the T-handle Allen tools with a ball end. So I anticipate upgrading to a 2mm T-handle ball end Allen tool for quickly mounting and unmounting blades. Right there, I just wanted to note that one thing that I'm concerned about is those clamps leaving a mark on the face of the knife. They are light. I believe they are made out of aluminum, and what I just grabbed was a magnet off of my clipper sharpener. and I held the magnet to those arms to just validate that they were not magnetic. They're not steel. They're most likely not stainless. They don't feel like stainless. They feel like aluminum, and aluminum is soft. So my expectation is that the harder steel in that knife should not get marred by the clamps. But that is something I will be keeping an eye on, and if needed, I will tape off the blade before clamping it. What I did just there was mark the bevel that I cut off of my belt with a Sharpie. This is another thing where I have done thousands of knives on a belt, and I feel pretty confident in my angle. So what I'm going to do here is just match my stone to the angle that I came off of my belted system at. So I painted the edge, and now I'm just doing a light pass with the stone to see how much it takes off, and then we'll do a minor adjustment on the post, in this case coming up just a little bit. I think it ended up being 18 degrees instead of 17, which is what I had it originally at, but something like that. Anyway, it's close. Oh yeah, check this out. There's that thumb screw that's holding the guide arm together, and here I'm learning that thumb screw interferes toward the tip of the knife. Later on, as I'm working through this, I discovered that if you unscrew that thumb screw and twist the two parts relative to each other, you can make it through so that the thumb screw is on top, and that way it won't interfere anymore. But this is actually, I hope you find this valuable. This is me learning how to use this system. And right there I was observing that there's a little bump at the top end of that. One thing I really do like about this is they have it designed so that you can get the full stroke of the stone on the knife. One thing that's very common is that we focus our sharpening toward the center of the stone, and then we get a significant belly, and we have to spend a lot of time flattening out our stones. If we are good about applying even pressure and using the whole stone, then we get much more use out of the stone, and it wears more evenly. It doesn't get us out of the flattening and cleaning, but it helps out. All right, so that was the 120 grit Edge Pro stone, and that did a nice job of cleaning up the bevel on that side. Yeah, here's one thing I'm also conscious of is that swarf, that residue that is both a mix of stone and metal. It can leave scratches in the face of the knife. So rather than using a cloth to wipe it off, which might scratch the knife, I use my wet fingers and wipe off as much as I can with my fingers, and I do that with the hopes that I am less likely to leave any scratches on the face of the knife. As I mentioned, the heel of this knife was particularly challenging. I did add a choil, but even with the choil, it was here I'm learning that you get the arm out of the way, and you gotta go that way. Yep. But that's fine, that's very workable. I do wonder when I get longer knives in here, like let's say an 8-inch chef knife, I will be looking to see whether or not that's going to be an issue, but we'll see. So I'm working the heel. I'm applying a little bit of twist on the stone to work in at the heel, and what happens there is I'm observing that even with that choil, I'm leaving some marks in the heel that I don't like, and I don't want to put a bigger choil in it, so I have to tolerate some imperfection, and I think that's due to the grind of the blade. Okay, you can see I still haven't learned that thumb screw can come around to the top, so it's interfering, but pretty soon I'll figure that out. Still using a coarse stone here to put up a burr. This is significantly less grinding than if I had not done the work on the belt, but here's that wet finger trick to get the swarf off the blade. Rinse that off. Checking out that heel and the choil, figuring out if there's any better option. One other thing that I do like about the Edge Pro Apex is that I'm holding the knife so I can take it off and go look at it under a magnifying glass. In this case, if I remove the blade from that clamp without finding some way of making sure that I go back in exactly the right place, I can't do that. So I do have a magnifying glass on a long arm here, and I'm using that to get a better look at the bevels. Skipping ahead just a little bit, one thing that I also noticed and really like about the TSPROF is that it has a awareness and a built-in understanding that the thickness of the stone matters, and if you do not account for the change in thickness of stone, then your angles are going to be off as you move through your progression. Now, if you're going to use just the diamond plates, those are all the same thickness and they're diamonds, so this probably matters less. But for me, that's a relatively new 120 stone, and I'm going to follow it with a relatively used 220 stone, and the difference in thickness is significant. So here I had to go back to the manual that came with the Pioneer to try to get an understanding of how that thickness compensator works, and it's going to take me a minute to figure it out here, but I do appreciate that they are aware of it and have a built-in system to account for it. I will say that the way I have managed this is a wide shaft collar with a cam lock, so I don't need any tools or anything, and I would say that the system that I have improvised or made work on the Apex is better than the system that is included with the TSPROF, but I do appreciate that they have this awareness to acknowledge that it is an issue, and they've done something to try to help us out with it. Okay, so in my monkeying around with that thickness compensator, I ended up moving the post, so I need to reset my guide arm height to what it was at with this 120 stone. So that's why I whip the Sharpie back out, paint the bevel, and adjust the post height so that I get it at the right spot. Once I'm comfortable with that, I'll mount the stone there. Now move the marker. It's just an O-ring. Move down and set it on the stone. And it's one of those things where it is better than nothing, but it's also relatively imprecise. And that's why I would even consider trying to find a wide cam lock shaft collar that would go on that post. And that would, I would say, be an upgrade for this system. But anyway, now I got it set for that, so I'm going to bring in this other stone. Try to hold it, take that, release the thumb screw so the post moves, and then set the height at the right thing without moving that O-ring on the shaft. Maybe give a little extra tension there on that thumb screw to hold the post. And then I should be, see how it's, see that the thumb screw right where my hand is the one that was interfering on the earlier stone. I just rotated it. And now you see that it is not in the way. But what did happen there is I brought it right off the stone came right off the edge of the knife, so I need to adjust my compensator at the end of that guide arm so that I can get full stroke and not come off the blade. I do appreciate that. I think that's a nice feature. I think once I get these things dialed in, this will be a really great system. One thing I really want to pay attention to here and highlight is that that knife is not deflecting as I'm pushing down with my stone. I'm not pushing down hard, but it is rigid. And we've seen on some other systems, if there is deflection there while you push down during the sharpening, the stone will rock up onto the shoulder of the bevel and come off of the apex. So you won't actually be working the apex of the knife. So that rigidity is a very important feature, and I do appreciate you know, it's really the materials they chose to do this that gets it so rigid like that. So that's a great feature. I just want to take a minute to introduce myself. My name is Matt. I own the American Edge. This knife that I'm working on is a knife that was brought to me for me to sharpen with a customer of mine. I started the American Edge in 2016, and after several years of trying to get a knife sharpening business going, like generating revenue, I realized that I had learned so much, and if I had known after several years, if I'd known that much at the very beginning, I could have achieved, I would call success much sooner. And that spawned the idea of starting a community so that I could teach those things. And that's how the Guild of Professional Sharpeners got started. The Guild is really a community of sharpening business owners. And it's an online-based thing. I'll drop a link here in the description if you want to check it out. But inside the Guild, I have 3 digital courses to help anyone who wants to start a sharpening business go from essentially knowing very little to nothing about sharpening or business to having a profitable business. And my goal is for you to accomplish that in 1 year. So there's a lot of content there. There's over 100 members. We do weekly calls, and there's a running forum so you can ask questions along the way. You can learn more about that at guildofsharpeners.org. And I think that's it. So I hope you're getting value from this. I'm learning a lot as I go through, and I'm using this tool, and I'm happy to share that with you. So let's get back to the show. But if you want to check out the American Edge or the Guild of Professional Sharpeners, or reach out to me, go to the description in this video. Thanks. We may speed up or move around a little bit, but there are some other observations that I had during the sharpening that I wanted to highlight. And it might have just happened, or maybe it's about to happen. But anyway, as I pushed down a little bit while sharpening with the stone, I noticed that the post was slipping up. And then the issue there is that, the angle changes, and now you're way steeper than you were before. So I think the way to compensate for that would be not to push down too hard, right? So there's a feel that I need to develop on this system, but also maybe try to that thumb screw that holds the post in place maybe needs a little more moxie than I was originally putting onto it. So that's why I just brought the Sharpie back out and taking a little bit of time to reset exactly where that was, so I fall right back onto the bevel that I had originally created. I'm going to speed it up to triple time here. This is the stuff that's all kind of like, I'm just getting the stone dialed in. I'm going to be moving up in grit, so I'm on the 220 grit stone here. One thing to note there is I was noticing some chatter, squeak, something like that, so I sprayed some water on that guide arm, it did take the chatter away. It happened a few more times, so I might consider using something other than water. Maybe there's like a thin coat of WD or something, but maybe a little bit of lubrication on there would be a good step to include. I think I'm on a 400 grit stone here. Just getting all the scratches out and making sure that I get the bevel all the way out to the apex as I go up in stone. I really do like that the lock-in and the clamp, like it really does fall right back into place going from side to side, and I do think that is a good feature. Clean these off, throw another stone in. I'll get the hang of that. That's set up there, adjusting for stone height. Will take a little bit of practice to get dialed in. But then I'm going to slow it back down here because right here, my handle comes off. So that was this part there, that thumb screw in my left hand. That was the part that was interfering before. So while I was manipulating it before, I must have moved it, and now I need to put it back together. So that was a good lesson learned, to orient that the right way, and then make sure that I have tightened it enough to prevent that from happening again in the future. One other thing that I want to comment on is that I really like how TSPROF has made their system accommodate these standard 1x6 stones, and you're seeing me put it all on one side of that guide arm. On the other side of it, you can just put a blank stone in. So they've really made it versatile, and they've not restricted us to using a certain stone or, you know, complying with a certain setup. So I really appreciate that flexibility, and it allows us to experiment with a lot more things, stones and strops and diamonds and all that stuff. So I think that's a great feature, and I do appreciate that they designed it that way. All right, I'm going to speed it up again. This is all kind of standard stuff here. Working up through grit, I'm at 1100 diamond matrix here, and I'm going to go up to a 4000 grit diamond matrix, and I will be finishing it with a 6000 polishing tape. These are things so I'm putting a little more lube on that guide arm. I think that's something I'll have to keep exploring. But I think a lot of times as we go up in grit and get these polished finishes, it doesn't necessarily improve cutting quality, but it does make the bevels look nice and they shine and pop, which is really cool. Again, magnifying glass, taking a close look. Let's see, cleaning it off. I think I'm going up to the polishing tape next, so I want a nice dry. These tapes run dry rather than wet. And that should make the Facebook finish, I like to call it. You can actually see a little glare from that edge there. All right, let's take that out of the clamp. Make sure we clean it off nice so we don't add any scratches to it. Inspecting it under the light and magnifying glass again. Not my best work. One thing if it catches on the thumbnail, that's a good sign, but we'll do a little cut test here. If you've made it this long, you're actually interested in this sort of thing. So right now I use the same paper for my cut test, and I develop a feel for what it's like cutting that paper. And I make a point to do a slicing action through the paper, so if there's a nick or anywhere that it catches, I know it. So to me it's less of like a show, and it's really more of understanding whether or not my edge is sharp. So one thing I want to experiment with this too, and I have been on the Edge Pro as well, is the burr removal on that last step with the stone. So I took a few passes on that hanging strop. That's just bare leather. That's a razor strop. And I noticed, maybe it's just barely a little bit better. But over the time I've been sharpening, I have found that this leather wheel with the magic blue compound is the best burr removal I have. The issue with it is that when you go onto a wheel, it's really hard to get an angle that's just right. And we just did that whole sharpening process with a flat grind, and on a wheel you're effectively hollow grinding. So in order to get all the way out to the apex, you will end up, if you look really close, you're going to leave just a little micro bevel at the very edge. And for me, in my opinion, the improvement in burr removal and cutting quality is worth that tiny micro bevel that is only visible to people who look extremely close for it. So and then from that cut test, like it was a noticeable improvement taking that pass on that leather wheel. So I think it's worth doing. I think I just have a few things here for you. So not bad, not my best work, but not bad. Tough to handle that heel and choil on this blade design. Nice shiny finish. Overall, I'm very satisfied with the TSPROF. The build quality is very good, and I really love that it locks in, and I look forward to doing some more knives on this.